So the last and final phase of the game is the aftermath phase. During this, again, complete the aftermath actions or events in any order that you choose. So we would look through the different cards here and see if anything triggers during an aftermath event. So here we have a travel, we have an aftermath. So right here is remove one energy from each engaged ship in this sector. Well, we had engaged this opposition ship, and our Conclave of Niphon is also engaged. So what we would do is we would remove one energy. Remember, always removing defensive energy first. And over here, we have a defensive tech installed. This will be removed, and that will scrap this card. Now remember, when it tells you to remove an energy, you do not compare that against the defensive value. That is just remove straight from whatever card or panel that it is referencing. Combat is the only time where you will reference a weapon energy against a defensive energy. These do not count for that. Now this card specifically, this is a Conclave of Niphon starting deck card. So when this is scrapped, it says, and remember, we have the little red icon down here along with the defensive, which means that something triggers when this is scrapped. It says that when it's scrapped from play, the Conclave of Niphon gains one defensive energy. So we'll take that one that we just removed from the card and place it back onto the Conclave's panel. Then this card, now this is a very important distinction. This card has been scrapped. Through damage or through an event, it has been scrapped. What that means is that it is removed from play. If a card states that it is recycled, remember, it gets put on the bottom of the respective deck. If it is scrapped, it is either, if it is a starting Strike Force hand card, it will go off to the side in its own pile along with any other Strike Force cards that are scrapped during play. If it is a station card that's been scrapped, it'll go back on top of the station scrap deck, opposition side up. So we have resolved this event, and again, remember, you can resolve these in any order. So then we're going to look here. There's no opposition events. We do have a couple on these missions, though. So right here it says, remove 2 energy from the Strike Force ship in the sector with the most energy. This one says move this card to the sector with the most opposition ships. Well, this one is just going to stay right here because we have 3 ships. And again, remember that however you want to do it to your advantage. So if there were 3 ships here and 3 ships here, you could choose to move this card to the other one or leave it where it is because you decide the outcome in a tie. Now on this one, because we have 2 energy must be removed from the most energy in this from a Strike Force ship in this sector, we would have to remove 2 energy. But again, remember that this never mind, that card would not play. And just make sure that you double check your cards. So this will trigger, and we will remove 1 from the defensive energy, which brings Therandim down to 0. So that will be replaced with the 0 marker. And then we will remove another one, then starting with the weapon energy. Because there are no defensive energy left, we will start removing it from here, and again, outside in. So we will remove this weapon energy, and this tech is scrapped. Again, remember, this has a green background versus a red on the corners, so that means that there are no effects triggered when this card is scrapped. So then we will take it, and because again this is a Strike Force card, we will scrap it in the Strike Force discard. Scrap pile over here, and then that will not be able to be put back into play. As far as I know, there may be cards in here, I'm not 100% with that, but as far as I know, these will not be able to be brought back into play. Now, this card was the one that allowed Therandim to stop all energy damage during the battle phase. Well, battle phase is over, so now we have an aftermath. If there are any opposition ships in this sector, recycle this tech. And again, this is a Therandim card, so that is one of the Strike Force special, but because it says recycle and it hasn't scrapped, then that means that it gets put on the bottom of Therandim's deck. So, now that we have resolved all of the aftermath events, then what we will do is, for each opposition ship that is not engaged, you will then flip the station decks. So over here we have one ship that's engaged with Therandim, and over here we have another ship that's engaged with the Automatronic Hunter. We have no opposition ships in this sector. Because there are no opposition ships in this sector, we will ignore the flipping the station deck during this phase on this sector. This one, again, we have one engaged opposition ship, so we will also ignore this since there are no non-engaged opposition ships, or unengaged. Now over here we have 3 opposition ships. 1 is engaged and 2 are not. So what we will do is, starting with the first deck, we will flip the top card, and then we will flip the middle card for 1 and 2. Now remember, if we had not engaged this Alpha Prime during the battle phase, then we would have flipped a third card, triggering an overrun, which would have flipped the panel, brought the Singularity's flagship out onto here, and generally done some bad stuff. And remember, making that the prices are more expensive in that sector instead of cheaper. So then what you will do is, again, in your order, you can choose whether you are going to play this one or this one first. It doesn't matter. The first card does not need to be played, and again, with the different sectors, you could play a card from here, here, 2 from here, 1 back over here. Doesn't matter, whatever order that you as the players decide on. Another thing that I should show you here is each of the cards on the station deck. Over here, this means that when the opposition side is played, it will end up being a boost card. Underneath here, on this internodal mine, we have this icon, which means that it's a ship that will be played out. So another thing is before you kind of, know, hey, this card is really bad, we don't want it to be flipped, so even purchasing it or getting it shuffled to the bottom or doing something else so that we don't have to do that, you can at least kind of have an idea of knowing, okay, well, this one's going to pop a ship and these 2 are going to pop boosts. So again, on these we have Geronidian Patch, which the opposition ship in this sector with the least energy gains 2 shields. And then over here we have the Demolecular Wave. Scrap 1 tech installed on each Strike Force ship in the sector with the most Strike Force ships. So, this actually is kind of a positive one for us, because we have 1 Strike Force ship in each sector. So again, we can choose this one, and look at that, Therandim does not have a tech installed. So we would choose this sector, have Therandim scrap a tech, which would not apply, and then this card would be discarded opposition side up to the top of the station scrap deck. The other card, we will add 2 defensive energy to the opposition ship in the sector with the least energy. So here we can count these up. We have 6, we have 8, and then we have 6 again. So in this case, let's say that we want to put it here. Then we can put the 2 here because this is 6 and 6. We can choose where we want to put these 2 energy. Now do keep in mind that you can't split them between the cards, so you do have to choose one of the ships. So here we could put it directly onto here, and then that would bring it to a 4-4, back to the same as this Alpha Prime. Or we could put it over here on the Automatronic Hunter, which would bring it to a 3-5. But again, these are the kind of things that we want to watch out for, and remember, if we can do anything through boost to move something around, the Alpha Primes, when you trigger it, it'll move all of the shield energy from bionic gatherers, or all weapon energy from the animatronic or automatronic hunters. So here, by moving the shield energy to here, isn't really a big deal in terms of the Alpha Prime getting it. Now, if it was one that boosted weapon energy, if you could move it out, or if this was a gatherer that would gain the shields and you could move it out, it would not go onto the Alpha Prime during this turn. But what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and leave it on the Automatronic Hunter, just because it's not going to matter a whole lot either way. But again, we really don't want the Alpha Primes to get too beefed up. So then the other thing to pay attention to is on these ships. Like I said, when you flip over the decks, there's a chance that ships will come out. Well, each sector has a ship limit. Now this only counts for the opposition ships and or flagship. So how this works is you take the amount of players that are playing and you add 2. So since we are playing with 2 players, the ship limit in this sector is 4, and the same with these. If we were to play a ship into the sector, the first one would go into play on this sector. And it's because of the way the camera is, it's hard to see, so we'll just throw it there for now. So we would put another ship into this sector, and then let's say that both of those ended up being ships. Well, when the 5th one would be entered into a sector, instead it would just simply be discarded because of the fleet limit. Now, when the opposition's flagship comes out, that gets put out no matter what the fleet limit is. So if the fleet limit is capped here and shown, and this sector is overrun, so we already had 4 opposition ships, this flagship can still come in here and bring that fleet limit to 5. Now, any other ships coming in there would be scrapped again until the fleet limit was below 4, and this does count towards the fleet limit. It also counts as an opposition ship as well, which again is not always clearly explained. Now, the other thing is that even though there may be a fleet limit of 4, you can actually have as many cards or as many opposition ships in one area if you keep moving them into the same sector. So if they come from here and this is capped and we move 2 ships from here, bringing it to 7, that's fine. It's just no more ships can be played into this sector. So do keep in mind that while sometimes it's nice because you can get them in here, you're already flipping 3 cards every turn, it's not going to matter, they can't do any more than they already have. Of course, not counting some of these special abilities that will trigger in these sectors. You're also bringing in more and more and more ships, whereas if you keep them spread out and you can engage them, then you're at least restricting the amount of ships that can be played onto the board at one time. So then what we will do is, for the final part, is you're going to do what's called the wrap-up event. So each player gets to recycle any number of cards in their hand. So let's say that Conclave of Niphon wanted to recycle this. So go ahead and throw it there, and then you would draw an additional 4 cards back into your hand. And Therendim is going to go ahead and keep that one, so he's only going to draw 3. So then what you'll do is, if you do have a grounded ship, which was if you ever lose all energy completely, so between both weaponry and defense, you will actually flip this card over, or this panel over, and it shows grounded right here. Basically it means you're dead. But you can trigger during the different phases, so requisition, battle, and aftermath phase, things to kind of keep you in the game, at least, so that even though you're essentially eliminated, you're not going to be able to do super exciting things. You can at least sit by and not just twiddle your thumbs while your buddies, finish having all the fun. So if you are grounded, you will take your marker and place it onto one of those 3 abilities to trigger during the next round during that turn. So you could have chose Requisition, or you could have chose Aftermath. So there are different abilities with the different ships. Again, if any of the station decks are empty, go ahead and shuffle this, draw out another 5 cards, and place them in the empty spots. If you had any temporary energy through weaponry or defense, this is the time where you would remove the extras to make sure that they don't accidentally get put back onto your panel or onto a tech card. And then the final thing that you'll do is remove all engaged tokens from each ship, because they are no longer considered engaged and must be engaged again during the battle phase. And that, for the most part, is how this game is played. There are a few other things here and there that might pull up, but again, just remember, the cards take priority. So if a card tells you to break a rule or do something that the rulebook doesn't tell you you can do, or tells you you can't do, you will always follow the card. Winning the game depends on which way that you play. The normal mode is to either destroy the opposition ship, or flagship, or destroy all opposition ships so that there are no opposition ships in play. The lose condition is to have everyone grounded, or all 3 sectors overrun at the same time. With overrunning, by the way, if at any time a sector that was overrun does not flip a station card during the aftermath phase, then that panel is put back into the contested, which I forgot to mention earlier. So again, in this example, if we would have had this flipped and we would have been able to engage everything and destroy enough ships to where no station cards would have been flipped, then instead of it being overrun, we would flip it actually back to the contested side. So you can recover sectors if you've lost them earlier in the game. But yeah, that would pretty much be it for Galactic Strike Force. And if you have any other questions, you can hit me up on Board Game Geek, or write in the comments below.